This video is about noise reduction and sharpening in Adobe Lightroom. So I'm using Adobe Lightroom Classic, but these principles work pretty much across all of the different versions of Lightroom. Okay, so to start with, I've got a high contrast image. This was taken of a church organ in a church in Wales. There's very little light. There was no light inside. There was just a small window on the right hand side. It was very sunny outside, so we've got this really high contrast image. And if I just go to the top here, so this shows the shadow clipping, and you can see where the blue areas are. That's where it's lost detail in the shadows. And if we go over to this one, this is the highlight clipping, and there's nothing on this image where the highlights are clipped, because I wanted to make this exposure so that I maintained all the detail, because that's really important here. It's always important to maintain those highlight details, as it's much easier when you're editing to pull detail out of the shadows than it is out of burnt out highlights. So on the right here, we've got our detail panel. This is where the sharpening and noise reduction is done. What I've done is just reset all of these to 0, just so we can kind of see what the effects of everything are much more. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide up, and this is off a Nikon Z6 II, and one of the things I'm really impressed about this camera is its ability to maintain detail in even the darkest shadows. And if I pull this slider across, you can actually see how much detail's still in there, even though all that shadow area was pretty much black. And then I'm just going to pull the exposure up a bit more, just to accentuate the noise that is in the shadow areas, for the sake of this tutorial, just to show you a bit more easily how noise reduction works. So I've zoomed into 100% there, and actually you might not even be able to see the noise, and it's quite fine. So I'm just going to zoom into 200%. Generally, when you're doing kind of noise reduction, you want to do it at 100%. Otherwise, going over, because you want to apply the minimum amount of noise reduction you can, and if you're doing it at 200%, you're going to kind of overdo it. I'm just going to scroll back down to the details section. So a little thing that I just want to point out while we're doing this is, if you hold down the Alt key when you're sliding most of these sliders, you'll see that it goes to black and white, and this is just to help you to see, to kind of visualize the noise a bit more. The one place that it doesn't do that is under color, and the reason for that is obviously because we're working with color, so we don't want it in black and white. So I'm just going to try moving the detail slider, and I'm just going to take that to the maximum there. And actually what that seems to have done for me is just increase the amount of red that's in there. If I reduce the color slider and then try reducing moving the detail slider again, I can see there's something going on, but it's not really making a massive difference for me at the moment. So I'm just going to put that color slider all the way back to the top again. So now I'm going to try the smoothness slider, and if I move that all the way at the top, I can see there's an absolutely huge difference there. If I go to the on-off button here, I'm just going to flick that. So there, that's before, and that's afterwards, and you can see the massive difference that it's made to that kind of color noise. And what we've been left with is just kind of something almost similar to film grain, this kind of white noise, if you like it, in the image. Now if I pull out, I can actually see it's already made quite a difference over here. So these are all on maximum. What I don't want to do is overdo the noise reduction. What happens if you overdo it is everything just becomes smooth, particularly where there's tones of similar colours. You usually see this in portraits where the noise reduction has been done too much, and everything starts to look plasticky. So I'm just going to reduce these down. I can just see the colours starting to come back in there. So I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. That looks quite good. Most of the colours gone, and I want you to be able to see the kind of the luminance noise specifically a bit more. So you can see kind of here in the areas where it goes from kind of light to dark, you can see the kind of the noise. There's quite a lot of noise there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go up to the next section, the luminance noise. I'm just going to move this slider, move all the way across just so you can see what's happening. So the noise has gone completely, but what I can see is it's also lost massive amounts of detail. We've got this kind of posterization starting to happen where it's losing that graduation of tones. So I'm just going to pull this back a bit. And then I'm going to go down to the next slider and just move the detail. And what you'll see is that it's starting to bring some of that noise back in. Now what the detail does, if I just zoom out and if I come back into here, and you can see there's quite a bit of dust and things on here. As you can see, everything's gone quite soft there. And as I increase that, it just picks out those small areas, sharpens the edges of those kind of detailed areas, and that's just making everything kind of a bit crisper. And so when we're doing a noise reduction, we want a good balance between those two things. And then one of the things, again, because noise reduction is basically softening the image and blurring things together to get rid of that noise, we tend to lose contrast as well, and so this contrast slider just improves the contrast. Again, just push that all the way to the top, and you can just see the difference that makes in the contrast. Again, every one of these sliders that you push up, as you push up, it starts to bring back some of the noise in. So it's a case of kind of pushing them up and then just backing off a little bit. And I'm always looking for something that looks a little bit, it looks kind of natural. And so if I reduce that to 100% now, I can still see there's a little bit of noise here, but it doesn't really affect the image. And one of the things you've got to bear in mind as well is this is really overexposed at the moment. So if I reduce my exposure until the detail in them pages comes back, and then just move down there, I can see there's hardly any noise in there at all now. I'll just bring that back up again. And then so the one thing that we've got left is the sharpening. I'm just going to take that straight up to the top, and actually I can see already it's not actually made that much of a difference. If I put it on the text again, you see it has, you can just see it's a little bit softer there than when I slide it up to the 0. Just going to leave that at the top there, and then I'm going to increase the radius. So the radius is basically the sharpening sharpens the edges, the difference, like this areas of contrast between shadow and highlight, and the radius determines how many pixels that are going to sharpen by. And if I slide that up, you can just see it starting to affect around the edges of the letters and really make that stand out. You can probably see this a bit more. So if I just bring these back to 0, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and so this is just this tool that helps us to visualize these things a bit better. As we slide with the Alt key down, we're now seeing it in black and white, and that just helps us to kind of see what's going on a bit better. Same with the radius. So this is where this tool really comes in handy, and you can actually see how that's being sharpened there. What you can also see is that all the dust and things that are on the image, like on the edge of that the top of the piano there, is being sharpened as well. So that just kind of shows you how that radius slider is affecting everything. And then detail, again, the dust you can see is being massively sharpened. This is kind of an important one. This is the one that kind of stops everything looking smooth and, let's say, like kind of having that plasticky effect to it. And then we've got this masking tool here. So the masking tool allows us to select the areas that we want to sharpen. And so as we increase this, the white areas are the areas that are going to be sharpened, the black areas are going to be unsharpened. So that means where we've got big areas of similar colours, so like the black keys on the keyboard there, they won't be sharpened, and the edges of it will. And again, that can have quite a good effect. You've got to be careful not to overdo it, because you can see here where it's starting to have that plasticky effect where all the colours are blurred together, and we've got that same thing here. Just back off on that again. You've got to bear in mind, as I said, this is zoomed in at 200%. If I pull back at 100%, that's looking very sharp there actually. And these effects are you know probably far overdone for what we need. And again, once you've done all your sharpening, it's probably worth just pulling everything back a little bit just to give it that more natural look. And if I just switch on and off the sharpening, you can actually, I mean, it's a massive difference, particularly in the shadow areas here. So I think that sharpening looks quite nice, it looks quite natural. So if I go back up and I'm just going to tweak the exposure again, just to get it to where it would really be, where I really want that kind of the image to look. How now? With that image a bit closer to kind of the final thing, how now that noise looks in there. So just one last thing before I finish. There's another type of noise that I've kind of noticed in this image. It usually comes along with long exposure. So I just zoom in here. I'm just going to zoom in at 200. And you can see this kind of pinprick of green here. And again, like I say, you usually see this with extremely long exposure images. I've noticed it with this camera actually, that it does kind of seem to come in a bit more often than I've seen with DSLRs and things like that. But it's just something to be aware of. And there's another one there, and so you can just get rid of that with the heal tool, just like that. And that's it. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. If it has, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and if there's something you particularly want me to cover, if you leave a comment below, and I'll see if I can put a video together of that. Thank you very much.